In this episode of Wanted, a Midlife Hobby, we'll talk about a pastime that focuses on the beauty around us, photography. Beth Pekoski, a photographer from Cape Cod, will take a shot at framing up some good reasons you may want to pick up a camera or look at your iPhone in a whole new way. Once you're exposed to this discussion, you may want to zoom in on photography as your next hobby. And here we are, our last podcast of this first inaugural season, and I am very, very pleased to be sitting here with Beth Pekoski. How'd I do it with your last name?
Great job. Excellent job.
Excellent. It took me half an hour practice just to make sure. But yeah, I really appreciate you joining today. And today we are going to talk about photography. And I will confess that in the back of my mind, when I started this whole podcast thing, photography is one of the ones that I was really most interested in. Not putting any additional pressure on you, I promise. It's just all about the good news is I am especially interested in photography. I am curious, though, how did you get started? That's the first question I've always got to ask. How did you get started and get interested in it?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be here on your podcast, Rob. And as far as photography, I think I've always had an interest in it. And I think it's really evolved through the years. Of course, everyone was using standard cameras for so long and, going to CVS and having your photos developed, and you had no idea what they were going to be. And of course, now it's so much easier because with all the technology, and just kind of a disclaimer, I don't use a standard 35 millimeter camera. As far as my photography goes, I use only iPhones. So some of the things I'll talk about today are specific to iPhones, but some are general for photography, and some could be iPhone or Android or whatever you're using as your phone. But yeah, I think I've always had an interest in it. I took a couple of courses, of course, in high school, and more recently, I've taken a couple of online courses or in-person courses for iPhone photography, since that's what I'm most interested in.
Did you start with 35 millimeters, though? Did you start out with,
no.
What did you start with?
I started just with a regular standard camera, point and shoot type of camera. I did during the course and way back in high school, I did use 35 millimeter, but I'm not as interested in delving into all of the many dials and lenses and things like that, which I know would also be fascinating. But for me, I like having a camera with me that's always with me. So you can capture things whenever you see them, and something that's small enough to fit into your pocket or purse. And really, smartphones fit the bill on all of those. And they've really come a long way in what you can do, editing within the phone itself, and then also with a number of apps that are easy to use to edit.
Okay. Do you do a lot of editing of your photos?
I think I do a combination. There's some that I use straight out of the phone, and then others I do a slight edit. There's a lot of editing options within iPhone if you go right in there. And I think a lot of people don't even use those. So I think a lot of times people say, oh, that's such a great photo. And I think really anyone could take it. A lot of it is the editing. So, sometimes you need to edit it so that it looks the way it does to your eye. So the camera captures it, but you might need to lighten up the photo because it hadn't captured all of the light. So there's quite a few different options within the iPhone. There's the editing itself, when you tap on edit on a photo. Mm-hmm. And then there's filters, which is separate, but also within that same part of your phone. And, now with the more advanced phones, the one I'm currently using is the 11 Pro. And on that one, there's even, options to adjust the f-stop, so the aperture. So, you can blur the background more or less, especially when you're in the portrait mode.
Okay, so here's an interesting fact for you. Before we started talking, one of the things I wrote down was, see if she actually starts talking about terms you don't understand. And I could show you a piece of paper that has that. So you've already thrown out f-stop, aperture.
Well, those are kind of part of the same. And that's something, a person who uses a 35 millimeter adjusts those manually, oftentimes, or they have an automatic button. But when you look at your iPhone, any of the more recent, I think it started maybe with the 10R and moving forward from that, if you just go into the edit button, you'll see on the very top left a little button that says F. And if you tap on that, you have the option down below to slide this little lever one way to the next, and you'll actually see all it does is like it blurs and sharpens as you move it one way left to right. So you don't really need to know what all these words mean. All you need to know is what to tap on in your phone and how to slide it, what it'll do. So I think there's a lot of options that people don't even realize are already within their phone that can make their photos more unique or sharper or different coloring. You can turn them black and white. You can make them sepia tone look if you want an older look. So between the filters and the editing tools that are already in there, you can really do a lot with those.
So why do you like doing it so much? What about it appeals to you?
I think I just really like to capture what I see. I mean, I think everyone, depending where you live, I live on Cape Cod, which I think is an especially beautiful place. We have tons of beaches and a lot of, natural beauty all around. But I also love doing photography when I'm in a city. I'm in New York or Paris or DC or wherever you happen to be. I think it doesn't really matter where you live or where you're going. There's always going to be something beautiful you can capture. So I like to capture them not only for myself, but also to share them with other people. Mm-hmm. So another reason I like it for a hobby is I love to walk, whether it's in a city or on a beach. And it kind of just gives you something extra to do while you're walking. If something catches your eye, and then, each walk or each tour you do, you have some photos from that you can enjoy or you can share, or, a lot of people use them for Instagram. That's the number one thing that I share them on is my Instagram account. So I do have a website, but I feel like it's easier to keep up with Instagram. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people use that as a way to showcase their photos, whether they're professional or whether it's a hobby, which I know you're focusing on here. Mm-hmm. It's a nice way to share them and to take a look at others on Instagram through hashtags.
Yeah. Now, and I guess you mentioned your website and the Instagram. I have been there. I've seen the pictures. So it's for those folks listening, CapeCodBeth.com or at CapeCodBeth. Do I have that right also?
Yep, that's for the Instagram.
Yeah.
Cape Cod Beth.
Photos look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, the photos look great. And I confess, the pictures in particular of Cape Cod, it's a beautiful place. And I think you did a great job of capturing those.
Thank you.
Is there a particular subject that you look for? So I have an old friend who, when she travels, she loves to travel, and she always makes sure she visits the best library in town. Just for whatever reason, it's become a passion of hers. Is there a particular subject, either when you're taking your walks or you're visiting these other, what do you like to try to make sure you're taking photographs of?
I think it depends. Because I live close to many beaches, I take a lot of photos of beaches. I do take sunsets, which I think is one of the most photographed things when people are taking photos. Yeah. I take sunsets, but I also find that sunrises are almost better. They look similar sometimes, but you really have to, you do have to get up early, but,
yeah.
But if that's not a problem for you, there's always less people around. So if you're trying to take photos without people in them, that always helps. And sometimes the light it's just a little different in the morning. So I do like to take those. I think even if it's stormy, at the beach, I feel like the beach or a lot of different parts of nature, the sky, the clouds, trees, they have so much depth to them and they're different every day. So you could go to the same location multiple times and you're always going to have a different photo depending on, all the circumstances, the weather, the sky. So that keeps it kind of interesting. So I do a lot of that. Also a lot of nature walks. So we have quite a few walks here that have boardwalks. So I find that's a great topic. That's something else I like to take photos of. Whether it's a boardwalk, you can, with railings, the ones you can walk on through the woods. There's a number of different ones here, and maybe whatever area your listeners are in, there might be some unique feature about that. I think also when you're in cities, I love the idea of the library. I'm definitely try to focus on that as well. But and there are, your friend might want to come. We have a library in Provincetown here on the Cape, and it actually has a fully built ship inside the library.
Really?
It's one of the features. So she would definitely love that one.
Oh my gosh, that's
But
fascinating.
yeah, just I think seeking out some interesting things. Occasionally I take photos of things like flowers here in the summer. Hydrangeas are a big favorite of everyone. So I'll do some of those, but it's not primarily that. I would say more landscapes. And I try to use a lot of negative space, which just means there's not a lot of busy things happening in my photos for the most part. It might be a bench or an empty swing or something like that. I don't always take them with a lot of activity in them. I like to have a lot of blank space in them, whether it's the sky, the low tide, the water. I just find that when you blow those up, it's more calming to me to look at ones with less activity in them.
That's interesting. And I think I noticed that you didn't have a lot of pictures of people either.
I don't do as many of people. At least I don't use them really for my photography. I definitely have for friends, because that's another topic. People might not care about landscapes if they're looking into photography as a hobby, but they might want to do portraits, which again, you can definitely do on your smartphone. I've done them for multiple people. Oftentimes I do them for my friends, for their kids, for the Christmas cards.
Okay. That's something. We're getting into that season.
That's another.
I may be calling on you, Beth.
Well, definitely, it's families, and I mean, I don't do it necessarily professionally, but I would do it to help friends. If they wanted photos of their kids or at a certain occasion, and that's a little bit different too because that's a moving subject. When you're taking a picture at a beach, nothing's really moving other than waves. So when you're taking photos of people, if you can have them obviously be as still as possible, it's easier to use the portrait mode. But if you're if it's darker, if you're indoors, it's a little more challenging with the phone because it's not as good in the dark or in the mixed light. So I would say if you're trying to do portraits or take pictures of people, if you can do them outdoors or in natural light, with light coming in a window or anything like that, that is definitely easier on the phone.
So all these things that you're talking about, you've learned about lighting and things like that. Are they something? I know you've mentioned that you've taken some courses, but from your perspective,
mostly trial and error, to be honest. I have taken shots of people indoors when it's you're using lamps and things, not actually natural light, and they just don't come out as well. Pictures outside are great if you can find a solid color background outdoors. A lot of times there's buildings that have, maybe it's a green door or something like that, or a barn that has a red door or something, a garage door, the side of a building, anything like that, that's a solid color. And you can have the person stand in front of that outdoors. That always looks cool. And again, you can use your editing to make adjustments after. And then when it comes to the editing, another thing I do use, in addition to the editing that's part of the smartphone, you can get a couple of different apps that make things really easy to adjust that will really help your photography, I think. The one I use the most is called Touch Retouch, and that's available on, I think, any of the app stores. It's only $1.99. Not forever. I'm not every month or anything. It's just you pay one time $1.99 for this app, and it's great.
No kidding. And it's called Touch Retouch.
Touch Retouch, and the nice thing about it is it's very easy to use, and you can look on a YouTube video and people can show you how to use it. But it allows you to take out some things fairly easily. So if you're taking a photo in a neighborhood or in a city where there are a lot of electrical wires and lines, that go right across your picture. All you do with this is they have a line removal tool within there, and you just basically click on that and you run your finger across the line on your screen, and it'll pull the line right off and leave everything else intact.
No kidding.
It does the same thing with, say you have a photo of someone and in the background there's, I don't know, a fire hydrant or something that you don't want in there. You can put remove object and you just rub your hand over that, your finger over that particular object, and it'll remove it.
Does it work for wrinkles?
It's a little more difficult with people, but when it's objects, it's quite easy.
It doesn't work with wrinkles then, is what you're telling me. So
no, actually there is kind of this, there's this remove object, and then there's kind of an adjustment tool on there, and you can if you are using this tool, one thing I would say is once you open the tool, the app, you should zoom in on your picture really close. And that way it doesn't look obvious. So if you zoom way in, you can like remove a wrinkle or something, just smudge it right over. And then when you return the photo to its regular size, you won't even notice it.
This might be the best thing I've learned in months.
It's great. It's a really it's a really good app, I think, to make little adjustments, because maybe you took a dozen photos of your niece or nephew at the beach, and I don't know, maybe there's a dog way in the corner and you don't want that in there. You just want the child and the beach. Yeah. You can just move right over there. There's one person swimming way, in the back in the water. You just want to remove that. You can do it with that tool, which is great. So I think that's a really good one. And then I think also if you're going to do any kind of video, because that's the other thing that, as far as photography, video is really big right now, whether it's on Instagram or just for your own personal use. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to use on the smartphones. And there's an app called InShot, InShot, InShot. You can do a paid version of it, but the free version of it is great. And that allows you to just basically tap a number of different video clips that are in your iPhone album, in your iPhone, whether it's video clips or photos, still photos, and you can load them all in there and they just combine them together into a video for you. So
no kidding.
So that's kind of fun to do too. So I think part of it is always having your camera or your phone with you, because you might stumble upon something fun to take photos of. And then I think part of it is playing with perspective. Like, don't always take the photo looking straight on. You might want to like stand up on something and look down on it. You might want to lower yourself to the same, like for a boardwalk, for example, if I'm standing there, it's a certain way you can take a photo of it. But if I scrouch down a little bit, now you're taking it on the level of where people will be walking. So I think shifting your perspective can give you some different angles on photos, which is always interesting.
So you make me think of different animals. So pretend you're a dog, pretend you're a giraffe, and try from your perspective, right? Just kind of.
The giraffe, you might need something to climb on, or a step stool.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Or stairs. There might be stairs somewhere. There's a lot of different options on there. And then I would say also be conscious of trying to keep up. I'm probably not the best person to mention this because I'm not as good at it, but try to keep up on maybe once a week or once a month. Take a look at the photos you have in your phone and try to delete anything. You might have gone to see a sunset and you might have taken 40 photos and really you only like one or two the best. Mm-hmm. So favorite them. You can tap on them to favorite them. So they'll have a little heart on there. So it's easy to see. And then delete any of the others. So otherwise your storage is really going to get filled up. And there's also ways you can back up. I would say back up whether it's iCloud backup or you can set automatic backups on whether it's the free or paid versions. On Amazon Prime has one, Google Photos has one, the iCloud, Shutterfly even has it. So that way you always have backups of your photos. So I think that's one thing that I would caution people against, because I think a lot of people take all these pictures in their phone, and then if they lose their phone or whatever, they lose all the photos. So every once in a while, I would transfer them to some other account, just your favorites though. But I would also try to label them. There's an option in iPhones anyway, where you can, if you're on your photo, you can slide it up, swipe it up a little bit. And there's an option to add a caption for that photo. So you don't even have to add a big one. You just could write sunset. So then if you're looking through, if you're trying to search for something in your phone, in your photos, there's a search option. A lot of people also might not realize that the search option, you can search by location and you can search by date. So if you're trying to look for, photos of, that you did something in March, you can look up, I just want to see only my March photos, or only photos from March 17th. And that'll bring up all your St. Patty's Day photos. So I think there's a lot to be said for spending a little time on managing your storage and backing up your photos, or having, you might want to have some printed. I use this.
I wanted to ask you about that, because I'm sitting here and I know people listening can't see this, but I'm looking, and right over your shoulder, I can see lots of pictures on the wall. And I'm assuming that they're probably yours. Is that a fair assumption?
They are.
Okay, great. So in terms of getting them from my phone to my wall, what's the best way to go ahead and do that?
Well, I think there's a couple different options. There's a lot of different ways to have them printed. If you just want to do a print or a framed print or something like that, you can use a company. One company I use is called WHCC, White House Custom Color, and it's used by a lot of professional photographers, but anyone can sign up for it as far as I know. And they do a great job with printing, and they have a really good customer service. They send everything packaged really nicely. If you're ordering a large photo or a canvas, they have other options, like many do: canvas, metal, anything like that. They really do a great job. You can order your photos already matted and framed from them, and they will come delivered to you exactly like that. If you want to do it a little bit more using your local resources, or a little less expensive option, is whether you're using theirs. Theirs are not expensive as far as the plain prints, or Shutterfly, or any of these other ones. That you have the Amazon photos, the Amazon Prime photos, Mac has its own photos, Apple. You would order those, and then you could go to, I don't know, whatever you have in your area, Michael's or AC Moore, one of those. And they often have the frames with the mats in them, and you could frame them. You just pop your print right in there, and it's ready to go. And then I think the other way, I think, is a great way to capture all of these photos, especially if you have limited space on your walls, is to do photo books.
Okay.
So whether it's with your family, or whether you want to do it as your hobby, if it's landscape or libraries or doors, your friend does libraries, she could do a whole book on libraries she's encountered. So, again, any of these different ones. I think the Shutterfly one is pretty easy to use. I've used that quite a few times for book. I know there's Snapfish and Apple, of course. All of the different ones use this. And what you can do is if you have the app on your phone, you can just move the photos right into the app. And then you can either create the book from your phone, or you can go to your laptop or a desktop and, just sign into your account, and all your photos are going to be in there. So that way you have a bigger screen to look at as you're laying out the book, and you can do it a little more creatively. You can put titles, or you don't have to, and you can put different sizes of photos. And then my recommendation would be to put it, once you have it done, put it in your cart. At whichever place you are. And then they often have special deals they'll send to you.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So, every once in a while they'll do 50% off of a photo book. So, but it's usually they'll say 50% off a photo book for the next 2 days. Now, it takes longer than that usually to create one. So if you have one that's already just sitting in there, you can just purchase it and use that special offer. So I think that's a good way to do it.
That's very helpful. Stay tuned after the break, and we'll return to Wanted, the Midlife Hobby. I will confess, one of the questions I usually ask is, what does it cost in terms of, an investment? I mean, a lot of, I've got a phone already, right? I have my,
You already have your,
I have my phone,
really.
so I have my tool. How much, other than that, is there a big financial investment from your perspective?
There's really no, you can do it from no financial investment if you already have a phone, up to, a lot more. So there are quite a few apps in addition to the ones I have, but they're like $2, $5, or maybe if you want to do a little bit more on your Instagram with how you display the photos, there's ones that you can sign up for. Maybe it's $15 a year or something, but you don't even need to do any of those. You can just use your phone in the apps that are already included on there. And then other than that, the only cost would be producing the photos. If you are using one of those storages like whether it's the Apple storage or if like the iCloud, or if you're using the Amazon Prime or the Google Photos, they give you a certain allotment up into a certain gigabytes. So maybe you can have X thousand photos in there. Once you go past that point, they do charge maybe $2 a month for you to have expanded storage in there. So that would be a cost, I suppose, but very minimal, and only if you have a lot of photos.
Okay, and that's all cloud storage, right? Do you recommend cloud storage, or do you think there should be?
I would recommend cloud storage. I think also it's not a bad idea if you have your top favorites, not thousands, but if you have, your top several hundred photos that you really would never want to lose. I think if you have them in multiple places, if you're on your phone and you have them in a storage and iCloud, one of those services is fine. But you can also, from your laptop or desktop, you can just put them onto a flash drive and keep it in an area that's not where all of your other things are.
Yeah.
But I think the only other cost would be actually producing the photos, which I would recommend, if, like we said, if you want to print them out, or any of these services, again, I've used Shutterfly quite a bit, you can take your photo and turn it into anything, whether it's note cards, gifts for people. You can create like iPhone cases out of your photos.
Oh, this is awesome. And I'm sorry you folks can't actually see this, because it is literally the case around her iPhone that she's showing to me right now. And it is fantastic. It's at the beach shot. And it looks like, is it like cabanas? Or
at the beach shot with cabanas. But you take awesome. Any photo, and it's really easy to do. You just take any photo in Shutterfly and you say phone case. You put in what size phone you have. Maybe you have the 8 Plus, or maybe you have the 11 Pro, and you type it in there. It automatically resizes it to that size. And you can get it with the rubber casing, and then the actual outside casing, which shows that photo.
Wow. Okay.
So, and it's like a nice gift if you knew what the size of the camera was that, someone in your family had, you could make that as a gift. Or I think making a pack of note cards of your, using one of your photos is also a nice gift for someone, or you can use it as a note card for yourself if you're sending it to people.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of other options. I mean, you can put a photo on just about anything, but there's different options within there that I would say. Magnets and tote bags and puzzles, and you can use them for whatever you'd like, and it's a nice way to showcase your photography.
That's very cool. All right, that's very cool. All right, so we've talked about the financial investment a little bit. What about a time investment? I think that, again, from my perspective, we're talking the word hobby. I have a full-time job. A lot of people listening have full-time jobs. What kind of time investment does it take, do you think, to really get to the point where you're very comfortable with photography as a hobby?
Well, I mean, I think you're always learning, or, if you're following different people on social media that are photographers, sometimes they give tips on taking photos, which is nice. Or a lot of it, like I said, is trial and error. So it doesn't take any time hardly at all to actually take the photo, but you might want to take, an extra 10 minutes if you're walking on the beach and, try some different angles and that type of thing. I think that what takes the longest time is the editing takes a little bit of time, but I would say the kind of the curating, where you're culling, the number of photos you have and backing them up into the storage, and just setting aside a little time to place your orders. Maybe just set aside a time, like once a month, where you're going to go through, delete photos you don't need, move ones that you do love into storage. And then if you have accounts set up, whether it's WHCC or Shutterfly or any of the others, Amazon Prime, you basically just have to, if you have your credit card already in there, you just have to click a bunch of photos, tell what size, and they'll send them right to you. So really that part doesn't even take that much time. If you're doing a photo book, it's a considerable investment of time, but you can do that gradually as you go, because they'll keep your draft of your book in there.
Okay.
And add to it.
Good to know. Oh, very cool. Okay. All right. And a couple of things that you've mentioned. One of the things I guess I want to ask you more about, because you've talked about social media. Is there a community? How do you connect with other people? Do you connect with other people? I should start with that question. Do you connect with other people who do photography? And if you do, what does that look like, feel like? How do you do that?
Yeah, I would say I mostly use Instagram for that. I find it's more engaging. I find it's less messaging, more images. And, you can search certain things, using hashtags. And I don't know if your listeners are as familiar, but, you could, when you put on your photo, or if you're searching on Instagram, maybe you want to look up, Cape Cod photography or something, or Cape Cod photos. You would look under that hashtag, and you would see other people's photos from there. Or maybe it's something really specific like boardwalks or something, and you would look under that hashtag and you would see other ones. And if you notice a lot, several from someone that you like their style, you can start following them. And a lot of times, if they're a professional photographer, sometimes in their stories, they will do tips. Make sure that you put this filter on. Or I just saw one the other day on Instagram, and they were talking about setting up photos for the holidays. So one was a mug of cocoa, like with the whipped cream all on top. And what she said was crumple up paper and put it in the mug first, and then put the whipped cream all on the top. So that way the whipped cream is not melting into actual cocoa, but it looks like a mug of cocoa. But because it's paper, the whipped cream will stay on top. Like little tricks like that.
Nice.
That make your backgrounds or things a little bit more interesting.
Nice.
So there's definitely, and then I think that the whole community on Instagram is very engaging. And, if you wrote to someone, probably not someone who has hundreds of thousands of followers, but if you wrote to someone who's a photographer and like, oh, I love this shot, how do you get that effect? And if it's somebody who uses 35 millimeter or a certain lens, they would tell you more about that. It is not as much for iPhone. They might tell you, oh, I use this app. There was actually a fire hydrant in the corner and I used this app to erase that. And then I used the Bryce filter that's part of your phone. But I think, there's definitely ways to connect with people through Instagram, but just do search in, I would say, the hashtag or the location tags on Instagram. There's a way you can look at the locations. So you might want to look at a particular, I don't know, maybe it's, a waterfall that's in your area, and you put Potomac waterfall or something, and that you'll see all the different photos from there. And it might give you some ideas like, oh, I never thought of taking it from the other side, or I never thought of taking it from up above. And it might give you ideas of different ways to capture it the next time you go to that location.
Gotcha.
Or I think also it's kind of fun to look, say you're going on a trip to, Paris. You can look up Paris photos and you can look like, wow, that looks like an interesting place. It's not in the guidebook, but a lot of people take photos of it. And so it's someplace to look for when you go on the trip, and then you'll take your photo of it. But I think a lot of times when you're traveling, it highlights different areas that you might want to seek out to take the photos.
Oh, that's great. And you're pulling in even topics that, like I travel was one of my prior podcasts. We're going to pull them all in there. So if we're going to take a picture.
Right. Well, travel photography is another whole thing, and a lot of people use that. And again, it's a great way to share your travel photos and your experience, or if you're walking around a different place. And I even use photography as almost a memory assistance. I take photos of things that I want to remember. You take a picture of a plaque next to something because you want to remember what it told about that, especially when you're traveling. But you don't really, first, you probably can't remember exactly what it says. And second of all, you don't want to write it down. So if you take a photo of it, then, and again, if you take a photo of a plaque or description of something when you're traveling, if you're making a book later on, you can show the photo and then you can show the plaque. You don't have to write what the caption is.
Nice. No, I do have about a half dozen pictures of plaques buried in different places in my phone. I will, for exactly that reason, because it's like, I know later on I'm going to say, oh man, what was that really cool story about that battlefield or whatever? And I can't remember. Right. So yeah. All right. So I have my iPhone in my hand right now. Okay. So you're going to walk me through how I want to capture for posterity's sake our discussion here. Okay. So you're on the Zoom and talking to me right now. What is it like? Does it matter whether I'm straight up and down or horizontal or vertical? Is there a difference in terms of the...
It depends what you're going to be using it for. If I'm someplace that I say there's a beautiful beach and there's a bench and it's a nice, light, I take take horizontal and I take vertical
Okay.
because it's hard to, once you've taken horizontal, if you want to use it in a vertical, it's harder to get it. You'd have to really zoom in and crop it.
Okay.
So I find it easier just to take one of each direction in case you're going to need it later on. So
Gotcha.
I would say to do that. I mean, on a Zoom, when there's two people, I would say horizontal.
Okay. That makes sense. So there's a horizontal. I'm going to do. See, they have like a real zoom, and they have what I call the human zoom, which is
when you move forward and
I
back.
just move forward and closer, right? So yeah, so I'm moving closer now. So I have a picture of us, and this is one of the strangest things I've ever done. But we're going to go ahead and do this, and I'm just going to take the photo, and I've got a little bit now. I don't want the whole screen in there, so I want a little bit of background, right, or something like that. Does that make sense? Or all right, so now I'm going to show you this picture.
Yeah.
So that's
so
you
now
and me
on that one, what you could do is, you could crop it so it doesn't show like the lights in the background and things like that.
Okay. What else would you recommend?
So it's kind of hard to tell from the Zoom, but you might also want to angle it forward or back. And that's something, if you're taking photos of buildings, especially in cities or houses, sometimes because you're at street level, you get kind of a skewed perspective of the building.
Okay.
That's one of if you tap on edit right now.
Edit. Okay.
Yeah. So you're going to tap edit, and at the bottom, you see cancel. And then you should see three different shapes.
I do.
One is a circle with dots around it.
Yes.
That's the basic editing functions.
Okay.
The one next to it is like three intertwined circles.
Mm-hmm.
That's the filters.
Okay.
And then the one next to that is the cropping or adjusting the size. So if you tap that third one, which looks like a square with arrows next to it, you'll see directly above that, directly below the photo, there's three circles. Mm-hmm. One has a circle with a horizontal line, one has a square with a vertical line, and one has a square with a horizontal line. Do you see those? I
do. Straighten, vertical, and horizontal is what they three, right? Okay.
So this first one is just like if you are taking a picture of a landscape, like you're at the beach or you're in somewhere in nature. Mm-hmm. One thing to try to keep in mind is try to keep your horizon line straight. But if you don't, you can use this tool to straighten it.
Okay.
So you can just move it to the left or right, and you can see it shifts the photo.
Oh, dude. Okay. All right. So I'm going to play with this later on and use all these different things. And then I'm going to send you my final product and you can tell me how I did. Okay. All right. I just want to finish with one more question then. Here I am, somebody pursuing a hobby. If I decided I wanted to choose photography as my hobby, what is the one piece of advice you would give to me first?
I would say take more photos than you think you normally would. So if you're at, like I said, if you're at a beach and you're taking pictures, I would take quite a few, as long as you're remembering to delete them later. But, take them from different angles, take them closer. Like you were saying with the Zoom, there's zooms on all of these smartphones, but like someone had said once, it's easier sometimes to zoom with your feet, like walk forward, go closer to something, because then if you have to blow that, say you want to take a picture of a bench and you're far away from it, of course, you can always, after you take the photo, you can zoom in on it, but it's not going to be as sharp as if you walked up to it and took the closer photo. So you might want to take one from further away, one closer, and depending what you're going to use it, because say you wanted to turn that into a big canvas on your wall, you want to make sure it's the sharpest or the highest number of pixels or anything. And that would do it. Because if you zoom way in, it's not going to be as easy to make a large photo of that. So I would say take a lot of photos and just practice. And don't be afraid to play around with all the editing tools, because you can always go back to reset to the original.
Good. Okay. That's good to know too. I need the reset button. So that's going to be critical. Fantastic. Well, Cape Cod Beth, I want to thank you very much. And that again for folks, www.capecodbeth.com or at Cape Cod Beth. Thanks so much for taking some time out to talk with me. I really do appreciate it.
It was fun.
Yeah, fun for me too. Have a great one. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our Instagram page, which you can find at midlife_hobby. Or follow us any place you can find podcasts, including Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And of course, when you find something you like, you should always tell a friend about it. Also, I'd love to hear thoughts and suggestions about other hobbies or speakers. Send an email to midlife.hobby@gmail.com. I'll do everything I can to follow up with you. Special thanks goes to Kristen Jensen for this episode's inspiration around hobbies. Kristen is the author of the book, How to Start a Home-Based Wedding Photography Business. And Kristen says, for those of us who consider ourselves photographers, photography usually starts out as a hobby. But I also have to give a shout out to Dale Carnegie for the inspiration around this first complete season of Midlife Hobby. He said, today is life, the only life you are sure of. Make the most of today. Get interested in something, shake yourself awake, develop a hobby. Let the winds of enthusiasm sweep through you. Live today with gusto. Thanks for listening to the first season of this podcast. I hope you'll join us early next year for season 2 of Wanted, a Midlife Hobby.